Hi everyone, welcome back to my latest video. I did an endurance ride today and I thought it might be a good idea to go into more detail in how to build endurance when training for a specific distance or challenge. So this will be the first episode of a series of videos about how to improve skate fitness and endurance by training. If you are a beginner, I would recommend keeping things as simple as possible. When you go out and search on the internet for endurance training and training programs or principles, you might easily get overwhelmed with information, different training philosophies like periodization, polarized training, interval training, etc. Of course, all these terms have their place, especially when you're competing at a higher level or if you want to beat your personal best times at a specific distance. But first, you'll have to build a strong foundation. The body needs to adapt to a certain amount of training load. One good thing of being untrained is that every single training you do at first will make you stronger, better and faster. So don't overthink it. Most people, however, start training too hard, eventually getting burned out or injured. Of course, this information isn't just for skating. These are general training principles and may be applied to all kinds of endurance sports like cycling, running, rowing, cross-country skiing, swimming, etc. Of course, there are sport-specific differences, but that might be another topic for a future video. I will now talk about the basics. You have to learn how to walk first before you can run. So, the goal is to skate longer at a faster pace. That is why we have to train. For setting up a training plan, it is advisable to take the so-called FIT elements into consideration for good understanding and overview, leading to better results of that specific training plan. FIT is an acronym and stands for frequency, or how often do you train, intensity, or how hard do you train, time, or how long is the duration of your training, and type, what kind of training do you do? To meet these elements, let's dive into the basics of training. We all perform at a certain and basic level. After a specific training stimulus, initially the performance level will decrease and the body needs to recover. After recovery, the body has adapted to that stimulus and has become stronger, which is called supercompensation. For further improvement, it is important that the body is getting the right stimulus at the right moment and at a certain intensity, referring to the aforementioned FIT principles. In short, there should be some sort of progressive overload. The recovery time depends on the type and intensity of the training stimulus, but roughly it will take about 48 to 72 hours. So if you start your next training session during the supercompensation period and you repeat this sequence, you will reach a higher level of fitness. If you start training hard during the recovery period, your performance is likely to decrease and you are being at risk of getting overtrained in the long run. This means that as a beginner, training 2 to 3 times a week will be a good starting point. To determine the right stimulus for a specific training session, we will have to use some sort of parameter that represents the effort the body is making while exercising. When you go by feel, I should suggest you to use the rate of perceived exertion scale or RPE scale. This is a reliable scale from 1 to 10 to monitor the intensity of a workout or training session, 1 being very light and 10 being extremely hard. Besides, this scale corresponds well with the different heart rate training zones I will discuss now. As a skater, we can use our heart rate as a parameter corresponding with the rate of exertion, and therefore you should have a heart rate monitor. As we exert ourselves, the heart rate will increase in order to supply enough oxygen to the muscles. The bigger the effort, the higher the heart rate. So there's a correlation between heart rate and effort, which can be used to determine the different training zones. First, we will have to know our maximum heart rate. As one gets older, maximum heart rate decreases. A common rule to calculate your maximum heart rate is this formula: 220 minus age. However, this is not very accurate, but this will do as an example for most recreational skaters. Maximum heart rate differs from person to person though, so it's better to use the maximum heart rate after an all-out effort. After finding the heart rate max, you can calculate the different heart rate zones, which will be your training zones. I am using the 3-zone model by Stefan Seiler, which is widely used in scientific research. Besides, it's simple, and these 3 zones are determined by physiological changes during exercise when both heart rate and level of blood lactate increase. To determine the different training zones, it is recommended to perform a physiological exercise test for the most accurate results, and from there to define aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold. However, we can also use a percentage of heart rate max to estimate these 3 different zones, which will do for the most of us. Zone 1 is the low intensity zone. The heart rate lies between 55% till 85% of your heart rate max. Zone 2 is the moderate intensity zone. Heart rate is between 85% till 90% of your heart rate max. And finally, Zone 3 is the high intensity zone, as the heart rate is between 90 till 100% of your heart rate max. Zone 1 and 2 are divided by the aerobic threshold, or first ventilatory threshold. The aerobic threshold is determined by the slight increase of blood lactate as a byproduct of the oxidation of carbohydrates, but the body is still able to neutralize. You start to breathe somewhat heavily, but you still can speak in short sentences. Zone 2 and 3 are divided by the anaerobic threshold, or second ventilatory threshold. The anaerobic threshold is determined by fast increase of blood lactate, as the body isn't capable anymore of neutralizing the amount of lactic acid in the muscles. Muscle fatigue kicks in, you are breathing heavily, and it's very difficult to speak. Besides, these 3 zones also correspond with different energy systems, which will be discussed in future videos. So, to become a better version of yourself or to improve your endurance and performance, it's important to target all 3 zones when following a training plan. That means that during a training session, you should meet the specific characteristics of the specific training zone for the best results. So, Zone 1 is for a long and easy endurance training at a pace that you can sustain for hours, or can be used as a recovery training when skating for a shorter period of time. Fat is the main source of fuel. RPE score is from 1 to 4. Zone 2 for a tempo ride at a moderate to fast pace that you can hold for about 50 till 90 minutes. Carbohydrates are the main source of fuel. RPE score 5 to 6. Zone 3 is for high intensity training at a tempo you can sustain for several minutes up to 1 hour. RPE score 7 to 10. If you are a beginner, I would advise to start at an easy pace in Zone 1 and build up from there to 2 to 3 times a week, referring to the timing of applying a training stimulus and supercompensation as a training effect after 48 to 72 hours. This way you'll have the body get used to regular training sessions. After a few weeks, mix it up with training sessions in higher zones for further improvement of your fitness by progressive overload and using other energy systems. However, by that time, you should also consider a more structured approach of your training by using a specific training plan. The A training plan can give you a good overview of the different training sessions during a specific period and prevent you from training too hard or too easy or training in the same zone every time, which in the end will be counterproductive as far as improving your fitness and endurance are concerned. So my take-home message is: 1. Start training at an easy pace 2 to 3 times a week. 2. Build up by progressive overload. 3. Use RPE scale or heart rate to monitor intensity. 4. Structure your training by using a training plan. And 5. Be consistent. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you found the information helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. In future videos I will address more topics about the subject, so make sure you have subscribed and you won't miss my uploads. Leave any questions, comments or suggestions in the box below and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Ciao!